CTV panic. Liberal strategist erupts at Pierre with outrageous racism smear. Canada's economic and political climate has become increasingly tense, with the August jobs report showing the country lost more than 65,000 positions, sending unemployment to levels not seen in nearly a decade outside the pandemic. The news hit hardest among younger Canadians, where unemployment rates hover around 14%, creating frustration and despair. Against this backdrop, the national debate over the temporary foreign worker program exploded into the spotlight, framing a larger conversation about wages, opportunity, and the direction of the country under Prime Minister Mark Carney's leadership. Into this storm stepped Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre and Calgary MP Michelle Rempel, who made waves by declaring that the program should not merely be reformed but scrapped entirely. Their message was direct. Canadians deserve the first shot at Canadian jobs, and businesses should not be allowed to sidestep hiring locals by relying on imported, cheaper labor. The boldness of their calls stunned observers, immediately sparking backlash on television panels and in Parliament. One of the most heated moments came during a CTV broadcast where a Liberal strategist, visibly shaken by the Conservatives' position, accused Poilievre and Rempel of blowing a dog whistle of racism. She claimed their criticism of the program unfairly scapegoated immigrants, casting doubt on their motives and framing the debate as an attack on diversity itself. The exchange was electric, with even the program host appearing uncomfortable as tempers flared and the conversation spiraled away from policy and toward accusations of bigotry. Rempel fired back by grounding her argument in stories from across the country. She pointed to Canadian students who submit hundreds of resumes only to receive no callbacks, while companies simultaneously bring in temporary workers under federal approvals. She alleged that some businesses inflate wage offers on paper to secure program approval, then pay far less once workers arrive, sometimes only a fraction of the promised rate. These practices, she argued, not only undercut young Canadians but also trap foreign workers in abusive conditions that resemble modern-day indentured labor. For Conservatives, the debate is not about demonizing immigrants, but about exposing corporate and governmental failures. They stress that the real abuse happens in urban service industries and corporate sectors, not in agriculture where long-standing seasonal arrangements with workers from abroad are essential. Farmers, they argue, are not the villains here. Rather, it is the large corporations exploiting loopholes to suppress wages while driving Canadian youth out of the job market. The Liberals countered by suggesting that many of these jobs remain vacant simply because Canadians don't want them. That argument, however, has grown weaker as the cost of living crisis deepens. With inflation eating into paychecks and housing costs soaring beyond reach, young Canadians insist they are eager to work but cannot compete when corporations prefer to import temporary labor at lower cost. Critics accuse the Carney government of reversing earlier safeguards and enabling conditions that suppress wages nationwide. Tensions only grew as the strategist on CTV doubled down, branding the Conservative critique as coded racial rhetoric. For many viewers, this felt like a deflection from addressing the central issue: whether the program has become a system of exploitation harmful to both Canadians and migrants. The accusation that questioning the program equals racism appeared to some as a way of shutting down legitimate debate rather than confronting uncomfortable truths about labor, wages, and fairness. The Conservatives pressed back, arguing that the real crisis stems from Liberal failures on housing, healthcare, and infrastructure. They pointed out that immigration levels remain historically high while the systems needed to absorb newcomers are crumbling. Examples abound of foreign-trained professionals driving taxis or working survival jobs instead of practicing their skills, not because of discrimination from Canadians, but because of bureaucratic roadblocks and government mismanagement. Poilievre has floated reforms aimed at resolving these bottlenecks, such as fast-tracking credential recognition so skilled immigrants can work in their fields rather than languishing in underemployment. By contrast, Conservatives argue, Liberals prefer to throw accusations of racism at anyone questioning the system, which only deepens division without solving underlying problems. This rhetorical strategy may rally the faithful but risks alienating the broader public dealing with stagnant wages and disappearing opportunities. Meanwhile, Regional leaders like British Columbia Premier David Eby have joined the chorus of voices calling for a fundamental overhaul or outright abolition of the temporary foreign worker program. His intervention highlights how concerns over youth unemployment, housing shortages, and strained services are not confined to partisan lines, but are increasingly viewed as systemic crises. Even some liberals acknowledge privately that the program has drifted from its original purpose. Business groups, however, remain wary of abolition. They warn that sectors like agriculture, food processing, and small rural enterprises depend on temporary labor to survive. Eliminating the program without a transition plan, they argue, would shutter businesses and drive up prices for consumers. This sets up a difficult balancing act: how to protect Canadian workers and prevent exploitation without crippling industries that legitimately struggle to find staff. By the end of the fiery CTV segment, the fault lines were clear. Conservatives are framing themselves as champions of Canadian workers left behind, while liberals are leaning on accusations of racism to shield themselves from deeper accountability on wages, youth unemployment, and mismanaged immigration. The Strategist's eruption revealed how sensitive and politically charged the issue has become. With joblessness rising, inflation biting, and social systems buckling, the temporary foreign worker debate is no longer a side issue. It is shaping up as a defining battleground in Canada's political future.